This is the Authentic Dating series brought to you by Ahmad and David,
where we explore what it takes to have a dating life you're excited about.
Hi, I'm David.
I'm Ahmad.
And this is the Authentic Dating series.
In this episode, we're going to cover a very interesting topic and it's very, very excited. Do men just want sex?
Yes, just sex. We all just want sex, really, don't we? Isn't that what we're just running around doing?
Well, there's a couple of other questions. And it wasn't just about do men want sex, but also like, do men confuse sex with intimacy? And if so, why do men confuse sex with intimacy?
Yeah, so we're going to kind of talk to these topics today with a few points and this kind of a discussion, but also we're going to kind of give you some of our ideas and our own experiences within these topics and points, but equally some stuff for you to, as guys, to go away and really think about. I can like look at your own actions and think, okay, is this something I'm doing? Do I want something different from this? Am I aware that this is going on for me?
Yeah. So to begin with, the most obvious thing, and it's something that we're all taught in like high school, I think at least. I don't think it starts off in primary school, at least not here in the UK. Sex education. And the idea that most men are biologically hardwired to want to reproduce. So there's this lizard reptilian concept of being the red, hot-blooded male, the human animal factor. I'm literally reading the notes here verbatim. But the human animal factor of being an animal with sex, like this concept that men are just animalistic with their sex, like they can't help themselves. It's all they want. It's devour.
It's the testosterone that's coursing through our veins that's just like driving us to spread our seed and just reproduce.
What's that? What did you read on the website earlier?
Coursing through the veins.
No, but
testosterone. Sex is hunger.
Hunger
for a man. It's like a hunger.
Yeah.
Like a guys, like, you fancy some chocolate. And you think, I want some chocolate. And all you can think about is having chocolate. And apparently, according to Psychology Today, their article, sex for men is like a hunger. I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I've often been hungry.
Well, as you say that, I mean, I'm always playing devil's advocate, and I'm like, well, I could think of a few hungry girls as well. They'd be hungry too.
Equally. But I think there's a genetic makeup in terms of humans. You have to forget, it's not just men though, is it? It's like, as humans, we're here to reproduce. Our sole purpose is to reproduce. I'm a great believer that everything we do while we're here is in the aid of reproduction. And everything. And if you think it's anything else, I'm sure I can explain to you a way in which is actually fully in line with just making more of us humans.
Well, I think that's an interesting idea, because one of the things that in contrast to this human biological factor that you and I were looking at and discussed was like, well, actually, on the other hand, from a more mature perspective, are we confusing sex with love and intimacy?
This is point 2. Nicely segued in by Ahmad over there.
I'm very good at segueing. I'm a segue master.
Segue master. We teach this at home. Segue master. No racial innuendos there.
Was that English accent you just did there?
Yeah, Irish. Like as men, it's like something. This is something I really think is. I've definitely experienced myself as like, where especially when I've been in between relationships, where you're feeling like you kind of miss that love and intimacy you have with someone that you really care about, and you kind of go and have lots of sex because it's kind of the closest thing you can experience to that love and intimacy. And I think there's a lot of men out there that don't even realize that, like, that kind of deep love and intimacy between someone you really care about and really love being with and spending time with really exists. And they are just kind of out, kind of chasing around, just having lots of just sex that doesn't have much meaning and doesn't have much connection in it. And it's just leaving them feeling, I think I can leave you feeling quite empty.
So, I mean, I know what we were saying in terms of our point, but like, it's that, so you're saying like there's a disconnect between the emotion of how to express, the disconnect of how to express that emotion of love, and there's only the physical understanding.
Yeah,
of what
I think as men, we're not really taught about love as we grow up. as we get into our kind of manhood, we're taught very much about kind of our physical body and our wants and in terms of desires and things like that. We're not taught really how to express love and intimacy and closeness between one another, between a man and a woman. And sex there is a closeness in that, right? And there is a level of intimacy, but when it's just purely sex and just, sleeping with lots of women or having sex without having that kind of that deep feeling for someone and be able to kind of have sex with them and look them in the eye and really feel that love for them. And even, I say feel love for them, and for a woman, I don't always mean you are in love. You can feel love for someone that you have only spent 2 hours with, if you let your guard down and really kind of connect on that way.
I mean, that's a 2 hour long topic right there, I think.
Yeah.
Being love and in love and I was like, oh dear, he's just opened the door to a whole nother wormhole of conversation. But no, going back to that, yeah, like it's what I was really understanding with all of that is how interestingly, like, yeah, on a human level, we want that affection, we want that closeness, that intimacy, but because we don't know how to express it, especially when we're raised to essentially reject all things loving and all things like
feminine.
Yeah, all things feminine. Yeah, and it's a very feminine feeling. And so we're like, men, this is how we express love. This is how you do it in the bedroom. But it's very, it does ring true because like, I just, we're both like 35 now. Well, actually, I'm a little bit younger by like 19 days.
It doesn't look it though.
Right now, currently. So I'm not quite 35. But, just the experiences of life and how we've seen things in kids growing up. And we see now today, like, our nephews or, our friends' kids and how they're treated or how they're like told, oh, boys don't cry or this and da.
Boys play with these toys and girls play with these ones. And it all starts there, and like, you little girls sitting, not little girls, but girls at school, they spend lots of time talking in the playground and boys just running around playing football, whatever it may be. And these are stereotypes we're kind of wheeling here, but a lot of this stuff rings true for a majority of men. And it's just that I think there's a disconnect, especially a lot of young men, where they're not growing up into allowing that kind of those feminine energies come out of them in terms of love and nurturing and like really feeling what's going on in their heart.
Yeah, that's actually a fascinating thing.
And seeing sex as like, and I think this kind of moves on to the next point. No, it's not the next point.
I am the segue master.
Okay, I lose the segue again.
I was actually going to say, I mean, I actually thought, there was a lot more to point number 2 than we previously gave credence to or awareness to. Because that is a very interesting fact about men, especially growing up and being able to express yourselves and even to say you love someone and how and to hug and to hold hands. Holding hands is like another one for some guys. They can do it with ease.
Yeah.
I've always been like really odd about it.
Yeah.
Like especially when I was young. Or younger rather, and dating in before. I mean, but then there were like rules, like never to hold a girl's hand in public.
Yeah. And if you did use, that was your girlfriend. Yeah. It's like, even to now, I know a lot of guys who feel really uncomfortable with holding hands. Like it's something that I felt very uncomfortable with. I won't say uncomfortable with, but I was like very aware of other people seeing. Like, oh, who's going to see? What does it mean?
What does it mean?
Or what does it mean? What is she going to make it mean? It's and I guess that's also this kind of intimacy. It's like, say you are sleeping with a girl who, and it might be casual, it could be perfectly casual. And you'd be like, wow, that was such a beautiful night we had together. Now, a lot of men might be worried about saying that because of what she might make that mean.
Yeah.
Instead of just being in like, oh, that's what I want to say.
Yeah,
and that's
totally.
what I feel.
I'm actually getting, we could probably end this here. Just say like, do men just want sex? No, we just struggle to express intimacy.
Yeah.
That's what it is. We don't know how. We just don't know how to express.
Yeah, and it takes some time to learn. And a lot of learning comes through just learning to, for me, I learned like a huge amount on my ayahuasca experience a few years ago, and it was just to say the things that I'm thinking.
I remember you were going through that phase.
Yeah, and I just just learned to kind of say, oh look, I had a great night, or that was amazing, or just express it in some noise. Even I'm really gesticulating with my hands here, but it's just like to go, just let it out, instead of always, and not be afraid to touch someone in public in case what it means.
Yeah. So to move on to points, I think point 3 and 4 are actually quite similar, and these points really, I just want to like kind of give a contrast here, because as much as people often say, "Oh, do men just want to have sex?" There's a big generalizing, like sweeping generalization of men in that respect. And the next thing that I this is one of my points, is like not all men are the same.
Yeah.
Like social conditioning plays a huge role. Some men massively placate their sex drive. I know that was definitely there for me growing up, especially with a religious upbringing. And then others like absolutely admonish it completely. Like as in they pretend, they say pretend, but they don't even realize that's going on. But it's like they don't have one.
They become monks.
Yeah. And they can even go the opposite route. So like as in, like monks. And then the thing that connects that is the question of like, well, society, media and movies, and how they've historically portrayed men. And you had an example.
Yeah. We all know the James Bond movies, and he's always kind of portrayed as a very much of a like ladies' man, like picking up women, and very much using women for his purpose of like getting information or getting close to the baddie, and then them often just dying, him not being very bothered about it. I'm trying to think, what's the movie where the woman gets painted gold?
Goldfinger.
Is it Goldfinger? Yeah. And it's interesting because I've read all the Ian Fleming books, and in the books he's a lot more loving. When he talks about the women, he almost like falls in love with them, and he spends a few days. I think, is it Dr. No, where he meets the girl who's like fishing for like clams or something, and he meets her on the beach, and he's like really just taken by the woman, the way how she's just like so in the nature, and she's so kind of free in herself. And that's something you don't get in the movies, because the movies portraying very much as kind of a ladies' man, Casanova, pick them up, put them down. Yeah. And I think this is something that we're seeing a bit less of, I think, in movies and roles now. But it was definitely something like in the 90s, all these movies, it was like the leading man, especially action movies. It was just like this guy who just, churns through women.
You could actually see in the more recent James Bond, like
Casino Royale.
The one after that. Because after Casino Royale, there was a one where essentially like the girl gets kidnapped, and you see him actually feeling sad. Like he's like, oh no, like I love her, and she's gone.
Yeah,
for the first time. Whereas Bond, the other one, would just be like, time for a drink. So yeah, you can actually see through time how these things have changed. But something that you said actually when we were putting these notes together, which was interesting, which is like, that's what was portrayed, and it's actually very hard to change that
portrayal.
Portrayal,
because that portrayal kind of gets inbuilt into like, maybe men our age and older, and then they teach that to their children unwittingly, very unwittingly. It's very unconscious to teaching.
Oh, it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I know Gillette are trying to do their bit to kind of change that round with the little advert, which is pretty. I quite like the advert. It's pretty cool. But what we don't have much of as men is like the portrayal of men as that kind of Casanova / kind of ladies' man. It's not very sex positive in a way. Do you know what I mean? It's very much, there's no love in the it's very, very rarely.
No emotion. It's all play.
It's all play.
It's all physical.
Yeah. And that's something that I think is definitely something there's room for in the space for men, is like creating it that sex it can be really beautiful between a man and a woman, and a man can feel that, as well, and kind of put that love into care into it, even if it's for one night, 2 nights, or whatever.
I think that's definitely something that we've endeavored to teach through this podcast, and express rather than teach. I'd have to say more of an opinion and expression. But the next point actually is like around how men often use sex as a way of validating themselves. And I think just what you were saying there about the media, about how we continue to portray men as being this more physical focused and women as a trophy or something to be discarded, collected and discarded concept, leaves us in a space where it is a thing. It's like, who's had more women? And how many notches on the bedpost? As opposed to connection and honoring of human beings and respect and nurturing and all these other feminine words I can reel off. So often this is where, again, just because there's a sweeping generalization that all men are the same, and I've done the quotes with my fingers here, so the quotes, all men are the same, that then what does that leave? It just leaves a competition.
Yeah, and you can see it in men, and like, you know, I definitely feel I've been there where
Lad.
using this laddish behaviour of kind of like, you know, just kind of being like, you know, you've banged so many girls, you've had so many girls in a week.
What do you mean by bang?
Bang sex.
Okay.
Bang.
Yeah, just for the listeners who don't know what bang means. Okay. He's not talking about that milk in India that they mix with the weed. Isn't that what they call it?
Bang lassi. Bang
lassi,
it's the weed, yeah.
For our Indian listeners.
We know about that lassi out there. Good lassi. It just becomes a bit of a like validation tool to kind of feel more manly and feel more validated and
Need
feel...
that on a t-shirt. Bang.
By Authentic Dating Series.
Banged by Authentic Dating, yeah. That's good.
But yeah, you just use sex as a way to validate yourself and feel like you're more manly than the other men around you because you've had more women. And yeah, it's a really empty game.
Well, that was point number 5. Point number 6. Once you've had lots of sex, you see that it's empty and meaningless, mostly. But there is nothing wrong with having sex for the pure enjoyment of it. But the point here is, as you were saying...
it becomes very empty, meaningless. Like, and the problem is that often men, because they think they should be having lots of sex, or at least trying to have lots of sex, that's what they strive to do.
Well, that's what makes you king.
Yeah.
King of the castle.
And it's only when you've had lots of sex, you might look back and go, oh, actually, it's not that fulfilling anymore, or it wasn't that fulfilling. I just thought it was fulfilling. And you start to look for something a bit more substantial, a bit more loving, a bit more caring. And again, it doesn't have to be a relationship necessarily. You know, you could choose to be polyamorous, or you could choose to just be single, but you can still kind of go about your sexual life and your sex with love and care and honoring. Like, honoring is a big thing for us.
So I definitely observed growing up, like, especially, you know, it was almost like I had a difference in cultures, you know, one at home, one at school, and definitely in school and growing up with like other guys who are good with women, and just thinking, right, this is what people are celebrated for. Men, rather. This is what men are celebrated for. This is what means you're to be respected, or whatever.
Or that you are successful as a man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at, being successful. And then over time, because it was never really I've never really felt deep down that this is how I want to live. But by and large, looking at the men around me, I was like, this is how I should live.
Yeah.
And then over time, though, one of the things that stood out is that as we get older, is noticing where it goes from being, it's so cool that you're doing that, to, this is actually a bit of a problem, that it's no longer a goal.
Yeah.
It's now become something to get out of and pivot into something else. As people start to settle down and have relationships.
Totally.
And as a very interesting thing I remember learning years ago, especially learning this stuff, is like what it takes to have sex with a girl and what it takes to have a relationship are two very different things. Two very different things. And so then you realize that on one hand, at least anyway, when it comes to sex, if that's the sole focus and that's the sole goal, that it's that old adage of you climbing a ladder to realize the ladder's up against the wrong wall.
Yeah.
And then you're like, fuck, I need to switch walls. It's not always the case. I'm not like, bashing anyone who's living or has a certain life choice in a particular way. I'm just merely pointing out that how interesting it is when we pursue something because we think it's what we should be doing, and then later on realize that that's not actually what we want, and now we've just gone so far down one path, and really it hasn't got us any closer to what we thought we were going for.
Yeah, I can say, like, for myself, I totally spent a lot of time just having lots of sex with different people. You know, it become like quite serial, to be seeing multiple women for long periods of time.
How long?
What, the individual women, or it could be like a year, and I'd be seeing, I could cycle through quite a large number in that time. I'm laughing because Ahmad's giving me this look of like, tell me the number.
What's the number, right?
But I mean, it's like you just sleeping with 2 or 3 women a week potentially, because you think, I'm enjoying it, it's fun. But like you said, it doesn't get, if you want to kind of think, oh, okay, I want a relationship, it doesn't move you in that direction very well, actually, you know. And actually, you know, I came to this realization quite a while back now that actually that's not really enjoyable for me. It's much more enjoyable to kind of connect with someone and get to know them and really just share myself.
And actually, that's an interesting thing there, right there. That's not enjoyable for me, and that's I think is a crucial element, and that's what, you know, I was faced with at one point, was going, hang on, this is what I thought was the goal, but that's not enjoyable for me. And then I've been fighting against my own enjoyment as regards to what I've been pursuing, and then realizing, oh, maybe I should just listen to what works for me, like internally, and it's a really internal thing. So again, it's, you know, totally, I don't think Dave, you know, or myself here are saying anything wrong, bad in what anyone's choosing, but rather we're just kind of looking back and reflecting and saying, oh, okay, what was our values? What were we looking for? Where did we end up? And then, oh, okay, you know, that no longer made us happy.
Yeah. And then you decide that you think, okay, I wouldn't mind something a bit more substantial. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stop having sex altogether. You just might add more love into your sexual relationships in general.
So point number 7 was sex in relationships, actually. So there you go. Pretty good segue. You've had good segues in the past.
I'm good at that.
So sex in relationships. Again, you had a really good point that you made during the notes about a man's sex drive dipping and a woman's increasing.
Yeah, it's been my experience a few times, and like the experience of some of my friends, or maybe it's just me that my sex drive dips. I don't know if that's been up for you, but like often in a relationship, I think we just get very comfortable with each other, don't we? Where you're kind of like, oh, it's Thursday night and we could have sex, or we could watch one more episode of Game of Thrones, you know? And it just kind of means that, you know, you go from having sex every night to quite easily having sex once a week, once every 2 weeks, or, you know, I've met and spoken to people who are in a lot of sexless relationships, which I think is classed as like less than twice a year, or less than twice every 6 months. I have to check the thing there, but like, you know, anything like that's pretty low. And you just get very comfortable, and you're not, you know, you stop kind of, you know, making any real effort to make it something you prioritize.
Yeah, I've noticed it's something, even like, I agree with you. It's actually very similar for myself, where once in a relationship, there's a natural decline in sex, and well, the difference between that and being in a relationship is just like when you're pursuing someone, it's like part of the excitement of getting to know that person.
You get the lustings,
and the sexual exploration and the understanding of each other on that intimate level,
and the kind of newness of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there was a real importance, I noticed, that when it comes to a relationship, to stoke the fire, so to speak, to keep things going, to actually bring the energy and recognize. And again, this is experience. It's not, you know, it's not something I was innately born with, but it's an understanding of like seeing that it's almost like you can call it a boredom. Seeing a boredom creep in and recognizing that if you allow that to persist, that becomes you. That becomes a relationship.
So what do you find that you do in your relationship to kind of keep that boredom at bay, to keep things like exciting and new and enjoyable?
Well, genuinely, I think the thing that works for me and my girlfriend is that we actually are very expressive. Like we communicate. What I mean by it is we communicate, and so speaking openly about these things and actually communicating about our wants and desires, again, openly, and always having that ability to communicate. And the reason why I'm saying that as the answer is because I know where there's been situations where there's been a disparity between the two of us. We'll talk about it, and it'll come up, and then we can actually communicate and see how each other feels and how we want to move things forward. So there's that. And then the other thing again is understanding that it is a thing. It's not like, oh no, it's not going to happen to me.
Because it will.
Yeah. So I'm not coming at it from that perspective. I'm coming from this perspective of like, oh, okay, this is something that can happen, and I need to bring. There's an old saying, and I'm not saying I live by this, but it's a really good saying, and it's like, if you always do what you did at the beginning, there'll never be an end. And it's easier said than done, but it's essentially, it's like, you know, that energy that you bring at the beginning with the interest and that almost like puppy-like excitement to a relationship. Like, you know, if you keep that and it's easier said than done.
Yeah,
You know, we're both relatively young and in young relationships and whatever. But for people who've been together for like 40 years, we're like, listen to this guy and shut the fuck up. but what we're saying is finding a way, and I can only imagine going forward, it's routines, like actually having routines and awareness around each other and creating these things. Like I have another concept that I like, which is never stop dating. And it's, I'm not talking about dating other women while I'm with my girlfriend, but rather, keep that element going, keep that excitement, that which you did at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's the same idea, keeping things youthful.
Yeah.
Keeping things moving.
Totally. No, I really agree. It's, for me, what's really worked is like really little actual things you can do is like still be playful, and still make it clear that you still find your partner attractive or you find them sexy, and surprise them with, fun and silly things. It might be that they walk through the door and you're wearing her underwear, if that floats your boat. It's fun, it's playful, it's something a bit different, instead of just kind of like always being just like, oh, they're on their way home, they come home, we eat some food, you get into that routine. And in my Tantra teachings, they really talk about scheduling. Like we schedule everything, but people don't schedule, like, you won't put in your diaries, okay, on every second Tuesday we're gonna have the night in and we're gonna make some nice food early in the evening and then we're just gonna have sex the rest of the evening. Like, try that out for size and see how that works for you. I'm sure that'd be a huge improvement upon the stagnating sex.
That was a big breath there.
Yeah, it was a big breath. I had a little breath to let out.
You spoke in a straight sentence just before it. So I think we've pretty much covered everything in that respect. And then to conclude, there was a point that it can be seen that for men, by and large, it's much more like a physical aspect. Men are more like in their body with sex, and women are more mental about sex and more emotional. By mental, I mean in their heads and not crazy. More emotional about sex. But actually, through this discussion, one of the biggest things that I've been getting is that more than anything, it's that from a young age, we don't express and nor are we taught to express love and emotions and intimacy very well. And actually that is part of it. Like we, as a human being, we actually do yearn for human connection. It's just fucking innate. Like the older I get, the more I recognize this.
Yeah, touch and feeling between people is just really important. Just, from people, we actually, and I think this is something that's our society, especially in London, struggles with, is like we lack physical contact so much. I think it just makes us very separate and very distant, and it causes a lot of unhappiness in your life. I was at my Tantra school last week, and they talked about how 7 hugs a day will just make you feel better as a human being. Like it make you feel happier, make you healthier all round. Like it just make your energy better. And I couldn't agree more. Like if you start hugging people for your day, it will just make all the world of difference, because that physical contact will just kind of, you give people energy, you give them love, and the reverse happens too.
I agree. This episode was brought to you by Hugs. Hugs by Huggies.
They
Hugs
sponsor good hugs, big hugs all around the world, making people feel warm and fuzzy and huggy.
We have hugs in all sizes. One size fits all hugs.
And we have a discount code for hugs.
Featherlight Hugs. So the last thing we want to say as well, and this is a very important point, because as much as we've been talking about men, there are also women on this planet, and the main thing about here is that women love sex too. And in fact, I think, Dave, this actually was your point, so I'm stealing it, but they actually love it more than men.
Yeah, I think this is something that society often, the standard rhetoric of society, I think there's a changing of the guard myself, but there is this kind of idea amongst many men that, like, women aren't as into sex as men. And I found for my life, this has not been the case. That's been my personal experience at all, is that women love to have sex as much, if not more, than men. And for me, physically, they enjoy sex more than men do, and possibly men can do, because they're much more willing to let the motion and the emotion get into the sexual intercourse.
Boom. So there you go. So that is what it's all about. Why do men confuse sex with intimacy? Do men just want sex? And do men confuse sex with intimacy? I think we've covered all of those three very well. They've gone into depth there. Would love to hear your points of view on what we've said here today, and by you, you, the listener. Because this is a very deep topic, and especially for men. I think the women will find this a very curious and intriguing listen. But especially for the men to open up about how they feel.
Yeah.
I know there is a movement. We are becoming more open and free. So do share. Do let us know how you're thinking and feeling. Drop us a message on our Instagram at Authentic Dating Series, or send us an email to hello@authenticdatingseries.com.
Wicked. Cheers, guys. I think that's everything, right?
That's a wrap.
Guys, cheers. Bye-bye.
See ya.